spitting out at me. So I flew on down the chalk, took a little walk outside to where my friends from school will play. I don't know, maybe so, it's just another day. Hanging at the quick stop, grab a Slurpee and a Twix, I'm on my way. Crossing lady stops me, brings the lecture now, and the hell's your head? My mind can't help but figure the Alice and the finger, and I ran along with nothing more to say. It's alright, really tight, it's just another day.
What is going on, Voodies? It is a brand new podcast, a whole new look, a whole new thought, and a whole new direction. We're going to be talking all about education. It is called Education Group 101. We are not here looking to find solutions or answers to every question, rather provoke thought on topics related to the world of education. Notice I did not say evoke thoughts. We want to provoke. We want to poke the bear and get people thinking. So welcome and thank you for tuning in. If you are a Voodoo out there who has no clue, my real life involves me standing in a classroom and educating students every day in the world of culinary, using culinary to hopefully create better lives for students across Hillsborough County doing what we do. I couldn't do it without many mentors, colleagues, and friends that helped me. And I recognize that I would not be where I am without them, and would not have reached the success I have. So thank you to everybody. We're going to start talking today. Much like I tell my students, we're going to introduce you to concepts, to topics. We're going to provide opportunity that's hopefully going to stimulate you to think and to think about the way you approach things, whether it's in the classroom or in your everyday life, dealing with other people and just guiding people along the path, because we're all teachers. Today's topic, accountability. So get ready, because you're going to be able to have your input. Feel free to drop messages in the chat bar. We've got some educators coming in, but right now we're going to bring in somebody you guys all should know, Miss Christine Dabbs. Dabbsy, what's going on, my friend?
Hi, not much. This is my first time on a podcast, so I'm pretty stoked. Wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
Well, you know, normally we have Big Eddie C, and we got to give a shout out. Big Eddie C could not be with us tonight because he is out running one of the schools in the district here. And big shout out to Miss Lizanne Ippolito for being our sounding board and our curriculum guru, if you will, in the topics that we're going to be discussing. So Carl Miller says he's changing lives one plate at a time. I hope that's you, not me, homie. Because I'm spinning too many plates, but but my real passion, it's people. Everybody asks, what do you make best? And I think if you ask me that, it would be people. I like to help people grow and make people grow. I really just use food to hopefully achieve that. So Dabbsy, if you don't know, is a former student in Hillsborough County Public Schools. Actually sat in my classroom for I don't know how many years, and then came back to be an assistant teacher with us for several years. And now you know her as the right hand of Voodoo and taking care of things, actually taking care of all things Voodoo. So again, just another aspect of what we do here. And Christine, thanks for sitting in for Big Eddie C tonight.
Thank you. Yep, I'm totally a product of Hillsborough County Public Schools, K through 12, and definitely have an appreciation for career tech. That really guided me in high school, and guided my future in post-secondary too.
Well, tonight we're going to be talking about accountability, and we're going to be talking about it through the realm of education. And in my opinion, as a teacher, this is job one. And when we talk about accountability, there's so many levels, but at the most basic level, when we talk about this, it's real simple. Are they here and are they engaged? When you think of a classroom, I don't know how parents really think about it. And I'm sure Dabsy will tell you I never really cared, because our job was just to drive student learning, student achievement. And first and foremost, they have to be present in the room. So when we talk accountability and I say, are they here and are they engaged? It might sound pretty basic. Um, there's so many factors and so many different pieces. But at the end of the day, we have to start with the littlest things because they make the biggest differences. And I'm not trying to go and start quoting Gladwell and get on the whole tipping point factor, but it's a true statement. And you're gonna watch if you watch Dabsy, you'll see some head nods and some things as we move throughout the way. Because two things, as we work and grow VooDoo, we talk about these things, but she's also lived them from a different aspect.
Totally. Yeah, I can count on probably both hands the amount of students that I was friends with in the program in CTE, and culinary was the reason they came to school. Nothing else was bringing them to school that day except they knew they were going to get to cook this new thing, or we were prepping a new recipe for a competition, and that was the excitement that got them on the bus, that got their parents to take them to school. So I definitely see that as getting your foot in the door for kids.
And it takes us to the first level of accountability. It's giving the students some place to belong. You know, you can talk about any level of learning. You know, people want to belong. They want to be accepted. And you see this through every realm, whether you're in school or not. I mean, right here in Tampa Bay, take a look at the vast variety of crews that exist. And they have big events, and people come to these crew events looking for a place to connect and belong and be accepted. You see it with all social organizations, clubs on site. You see it with fraternities in college, and I'm going to go there. Why do you think gangs are so successful? They create a place where people are accepted and belong. So you know, when we talk about accountability in the classroom, the first thing we have to do is get them here. And you know, so many principals say it on the first day. You know, they're coming tomorrow, whether we're ready or not. You know, when they enter your room, you have to make sure that they're going to want to come back tomorrow. And you have to create that space of acceptance, if you will. And that's what's going to get them coming back. And once we can create, and all this has to take place before we can even dive into any of the teaching.
Right. And sometimes it's the little things, the little details that make you feel like you're part of a group, whether it's like a common t-shirt or we had jerseys, and I never fit into other clubs. I'm definitely not athletic. So you didn't see me sporting jerseys for anything else. So the first time that I got a culinary jersey, and that might not mean a lot to someone who wasn't in culinary, but for me to wear that on Fridays, when football players and cheerleaders got to wear their uniform and I got to wear my culinary jersey, I thought that was just the coolest thing. And I'm lame, but for me, that was super cool.
Well, these are all things that go into that bigger picture, which are going to allow those learning pieces to take place.
Yeah.
You know, so once we create that environment of acceptance and belonging, then we have to start building the culture where students feel it's safe to learn, and definitely 100% by learn, I mean fail. Because, you know, we don't know what we don't know, and we're not going to be able to know that until we start going through the processes and failing. And you got to feel that safety to give an answer that may be wrong, and know that you're in a place where you're accepted, belong, and it's okay to fail and grow through that failure. And I am a major proponent of teaching through failure. Would you agree there, Debs?
I would definitely agree. Especially being, I mean, my experience is in a culinary classroom as a student. And you have so many options of tracks that you can do in culinary. You're more a baker, and you get to try everything. It's not automatically right off the bat, you're going to go here and stay there the whole time. You get to experiment and try things. And I know I've cut a steak with a steak knife in a pan before and gotten like, what are you doing? Moments like that, you think, okay, well, at least I tried it. And maybe this place isn't the right station for me. And I'll go and try something else and it'll be fun.
And you know, I know Dabsy is coming home to our culinary roots, but we have to understand it doesn't matter what the classroom.
So
It
true.
doesn't matter if it's CTE. It doesn't matter what branch it is, welding, culinary. It doesn't matter if it's core curriculum. You know, all of these concepts are the same when it comes to students and increasing that involvement. And, you know, we could break out data from our own personal experiences where, you know, Christine came back as an adult, as an assistant teacher, and we've documented our successes through, I'm going to say, our English classes, our social studies classes, because we did have our own teachers for these subject content areas when I did teach at high school. So we use these same principles to keep students engaged in those classes as well.
Right.
So, you know, don't pigeonhole, well, I'm not a culinary teacher, this isn't going to work for me.
Right. The application could work with anything really involving students.
100%. Now, once we create this safe environment, if you will, I got to tell you, my next part of accountability in doing what we do is building that culture. How you doing, Paul Compton? Thanks for checking in. Christine, I don't know if you're seeing the chat lines there.
No.
But say hello.
Maybe
So once we build this safe environment, if you will, you know, we have to start building that professional culture in our students. And when I say professional, you know, again, we're talking about using the lexicon and professional expectations of the culinary industry, but translates across the board, whether we're talking culinary, any other CTE, or, you know, you can use business guidelines in your core curriculum. We have to build that professional culture, which is going to allow us to begin teaching. And I hesitate when I say that word because I really, really dislike the word teach. If you were to go to any of the myriad of dictionaries out there and you look up teach, in its most basic definition, it's going to tell you to show someone how to do something. And to me, that is just such a cop-out, such a baseline, so bottom end of what we do. I really don't like that word. And it's funny, I started looking up other words to help us not have to use that word. So I go, well, let's look up educate. Educate means to teach. So I said, well, let's go to coach. Coach means, and it's just, they all start meaning the same thing.
Right.
But you have to understand, when I think of showing someone how to do something, I think of training. We're training you how to wrap the silverware. We're training you how to open the book and find the definition in the back. That's not what we want to do. We want to provoke thought. It's a building process, and I'm sure we'll come back to this word teach and my philosophy of not training again, just because it really does sit bad with me.
And I think you really try to go for the whole student, and that makes a shift too, where teaching can be like a very specific directive where you may be teaching a lesson, but there's so many lessons behind it that they're subconsciously learning that they don't even realize that's on the table.
Are you reflecting a little bit, Christine?
I'm reflecting. I'm starting to think, wait a minute.
That's really funny.
Hold up.
All right, so let's stay on accountability. We could tell all our stories at the end, which will be fun. So when we talk about accountability, we talk those base levels. We talk about, you know, bringing them in, making sure they're there, and then engaging them and making it a safe place to learn. Then we can start building that culture of our classroom. And again, the professional culture is where we have to go. If you're building anything other than professional culture, you're expecting those results. Remember, you're going to receive what you build. Cole McBride, thanks for checking in, man. I can't wait to get back out to Fat Rabbit. It's going to be a great day. We're talking education today, my friend. Stay on board. Use it with your staff. It works all across the board. So ultimately, when we're instilling accountability, my goal is to instill self-accountability through professionalism. In our worlds of work, that's what we expect. We expect our employees, wherever it may be, to be self-accountable and to use that professional culture to push them through it. And as we talk about the levels of accountability, students owning their own learning, that's when we as educators become true facilitators. And that's what we should be. We should be facilitators of learning. I see instructors all the time teach how. That's what I call train. They teach them how without really instilling the student desire to question the why. And sometimes they even do this without even offering the what. And if it sounds crazy, I know. So let me just change it up a little bit. When we talk about the what, it's really hard for somebody to gather what we're doing if we don't tell them what we're expecting from them. And I think just as basic humans, we want to know what's expected of us. So when we talk about that accountability factor, my goal, is to turn that accountability onto the student, because that's when it really becomes the most effective for student achievement. So if we tell them what the expectation is, it's going to be easier for them to achieve it, if you will. And it has to be done with clarity, which, again, oftentimes gets muddled. The how then becomes the demonstration, the walkthrough, the teach, the word I hate again. That's when we're showing them how to do it. But when we start talking about the why, and if we can teach students to own that accountability themselves, we talk about the why, that lets us examine the processes. It helps us understand why the processes work. Why are we able to achieve a certain result based on what you're showing me how to do? Why the collective processes end in a certain result? And a lot of times that's all lost. We're so focused on just how to do it that we lose out on so much and so much depth in learning.
Right. Checking the box, sometimes you miss the aha moment.
Teaching a class rather than a student, sometimes that's how we end up. I mean, and I'm sure we're going to touch on this as we move into our more refined topic that we're going to talk about today. Liz Ann checking in. And again, if you saw the intro today, she is my sounding board and our curriculum guru here. Students will rise to the expectation if they know what it is. And that's a great point. So it all goes back to that what, not just the what, but the what with clarity. And if you know Liz Ann, this is job number one with her. It's job number one, making sure all instructors are speaking with clarity and setting that expectation, because then students will be able to achieve that. So I hate the word teach, and I about said it again. So when we get to this level where the students are maintaining that ownership, hopefully we're able to help students reach the ability to combine previous knowledge with new knowledge and make justified decisions through the synthesis of learning. And if that's too much for you, we just want them to connect the dots, as my boy H would say. If we can give them the skill base and the whys and teaching through failure, they'll be able to connect the dots and use that application throughout the rest of their learning. And again, it's the accountability that they have to then own. And us as teachers, educators, we have to teach them to accept that accountability. How's that for some reflection there?
I like it.
You having some flashbacks on that one?
Definitely having some flashbacks. And I feel like I remember seeing other people connecting the dots. And whether it was an older student, because we had a lot of blended classrooms where you had multiple grade levels, and you'd see someone else connect the dots and you think, I could figure it out then. I could do that. I could figure that out. Because they're confident. I can be confident too.
We got a lot of educators checking in. Don Hill says the environment will provide the platform for the students to rise or fall to the level of expectation. Kay Youngs, no relation. Kay Youngs, let me just give you a big shout out before I even read your comment. I can remember back to, I was probably 18 years old, volunteering in your ESE classroom, just coming in, hanging out, and engaging with students, getting to hang out and talk with them, and just be there really. And it made such an impact. Marie and I both came down, had a great time, and it made an impact. And then you are one of the influencers and one of the connections that actually got me into teaching for the past 25 years. So I don't know whether to blame you or to thank you, but nothing but love to you and Steve both for pushing me in that direction. And thank you, because I wouldn't be here today had that not happened. And you say the why is so important, even with the kindergarten students. When they know why they are learning something, they do achieve it. And that's exactly true. And you guys stay safe up there in Iowa, and my best to Steve today. Tell him we're thinking about him. So when we talk about this accountability, Christine, if we flash back to Chamberlain days, even Chamberlain days when you were there, we had 3 different classrooms, one just totally disconnected from the other 2, and we would bebop around.
Physically.
And just that physical accountability became more challenging because we had students in so many different arenas. And it didn't matter if there was 2 or there were 20, 30 sometimes back in the day. One of the hot topics now, especially this time of year, is class size. We have a group of Hillsborough County public educators that are going to come in and discuss class size and accountability with us. But before we get to that, I just want to talk a little bit about the argument for class size and the numbers.
Sure.
So, there was legislation passed for core classes to hold at a certain number. I'm not even going to quote what the numbers are. I'm not going to pretend. And the elective classes to be at a different number. And, I remember when I first started, the curriculum frameworks, the outline that tells us how our class works, operates, yada, yada, yada. It was 18 to 22, which meant I would have 18 to 22 students in my class by the recommendation of the state based on what I'm teaching. I've seen that number go up. And nowadays that recommendation for the elective culinary classes is 35.
Wow.
And exactly. Wow. So we wanted to bring in some of these culinary educators to come in and talk about that and how they're going to work with that and how we're going to deal with that, and what some of the challenges may be and what some of the benefits might be, quite honestly. If we look at the arguments for smaller class sizes, some of the arguments are it would allow for more individualized learning. It would allow for more individualized and personalized instruction. The quality of instruction would be higher. There'd be less disruptions. We would be able to have greater engagement with our students and ultimately have higher teacher morale. I'm going to tell you, I could argue on the other side of every single one of these. And I'm sure we could find research to argue both sides of these points. And when we talk about this topic, we need to understand that the factors ultimately are not the classroom size. Classroom size is a very low factor when we talk about student learning. So I want to talk briefly. I don't want to get into too much, research and yada yada. I want to talk real world. But there is a book out there called Visible Learning by John Hattie. His research is based on 15 years of study that encompassed 80,000 studies involving 300 million students.
A lot of data.
The enormity of that.
A lot of
and
data.
It represents the largest collection of evidence-based research into what works in school. He created a ranking order that ranked the factors that influence an increase in achievement, aka learning, the word I hate. The number one factor that was listed was total teacher efficacy. So the total teacher is the number one factor. Now, if you were to take the factors that collectively created that total teacher efficacy, formative evaluations, micro-teaching, interventions, clarity, so on and so forth. When you break those all down, they're no longer number one. What becomes number one is self-reporting grades, which goes back to the student, which is student-driven intention, which puts student efficacy higher than the teacher. So if we are able to, we as educators, teach our students to become self-motivated, self-aware, self-learning, self-report, we're going to be better educators and create better students based on his research. I'm going to say based on my experience, I'm going to agree. So when we talk about classroom size and where that ranked on his scale, his research is based on a scale with 4.0 being what he calls the hinge point, or where learning starts to become most effective. So as you go up the scale, 0 to 4, not as effective. As you go past 4, we start reaching effectiveness and achievement. Class size ranked at 2.1, which is on the other end of that hinge point. So, he goes on to say, if you teach the same, if we teach the same, a lower number of students does not equate to increased achievement.
Okay.
So that works the other way around too. A larger number of students does not mean a lower achievement level if we stay teaching the same. We need to change us is where it all comes to.
To be able to manage a class of that size at the same quality level.
Well, Dabsy, you're talking like a teacher.
Hey. Hey.
So, there's a lot of thought to this, a lot of conversation to be had. I remember, and we're going to start bringing in our culinary educators here. Myself as an educator, you've been there, you've heard it. I would often argue safety. And as we get into, sorry, I'm reading comments, and I love that. What if the students write the dots, create their own dots so that they can connect them? And that's just next level. Absolutely. Safety is already becoming a topic here. Let's go ahead and bring in our educators before we get to this.
All right.
And I got to bring in one of my oldest and dearest friends in education. Actually, one of my former instructors when I was studying at Hillsborough Community College. taught me wines and hospitality and a few other programs. My friend Cheryl. How are you, Cheryl? It's nice to see you.
Great, Eric. It's nice seeing you too.
Did I ramble on enough? Were you falling asleep in the green room on me?
On with everything that you said.
And also coming in tonight, you've seen him on the VooDoo Chef podcast, hanging out, doing what we do. Also a culinary educator, Hillsborough County Schools, Mr. Mitchell Smithey.
Hey guys,
How's life, man?
it's good. It's good.
So let's talk accountability and class size and how it all ties together. In the culinary classrooms, it's much different than an English classroom. We have a lot of moving parts, a lot of moving pieces, and a former school administrator, Don Hill, says the first thing should be discussed when it comes to class size should be school safety. Teachers too. Square footage of a room, environment, equipment proximity, and usage. When we talk about class size and numbers, that was always my biggest concern. In the culinary classroom, people tuning in may not realize we have full industrial kitchens that we're teaching in. And if anybody knows anything about, working in an industrial kitchen, it's really easy to get injured even as a skilled employee. So now we're talking about unskilled employees that we're trying to educate. Cheryl, why don't you go first? I think you have a little bit of a delay, but let's see if we can get your take on that and your take on class size.
Okay. First of all, my biggest thing with class size goes a lot with what you're saying. I mean, if you have, depending on the size of your classroom, how many, and how many students it will fit, but also what I noticed lately is the different types of students that you get. I don't have to just look at how many students I have, but how many have special needs? How many do I need to teach a certain way to reach this student? How much time do I have to spend with a certain student that may struggle in an area? If everybody was on the same playing field, if everybody had the same aptitude, it would be totally different. But we're seeing more and more students that come with all these different things, like, for my student, you need to do this, and for my child, you need. And there's so much of that class size can make it. To me, it matters. When I have 37 students in a class, that they are shoulder to shoulder, and they're all at different levels, meaning, educationally wise, they all have different levels of aptitude in how they learn. I have to make sure that I'm reaching every single student in that class, and I have 48 minutes to do it in. So
48. And
minutes per class.
You're talking about that. I'm a major proponent of meeting the student where at their starting point. We personalize education. I know, and that's what makes us effective. Teaching a student, not a class. If you're teaching a class, you're not really being effective. And we're going to lose a lot of people, and they're going to fall off the back end. But when we meet the students at their starting point, if you will, we'd like to think that the gaps aren't that large. But unfortunately, they are. So if we're going to personalize that education, you're right, it does become difficult the larger the class size becomes. And the time constraints make it more challenging. And the longer the relationship with the student, the easier it is. But in our elective world, if you will, because we are still looked at as an elective.
Definitely.
Students come and go. Mm-hmm. And whereas the three educators in the room right now, no offense, Dabsy, former educator.
A homeschool mom.
Yeah. We
Yes.
come from a world where we take our industry very seriously. And we don't look at our elective class as an elective class. And I'm going to be honest, it's kind of hard for us to think of it as an elective when we're being held to standards such as national certification for every student. And so it's like, where is our balance? Where is our balance?
That's true. And I remember, I'm not sure if it's still the same classification, but when I was in high school, those were considered labs. So it's interesting for it to be treated, because I can't imagine a chemistry lab where you're dealing with chemicals will be treated with the same number of students, but maybe I'm wrong.
Lizanne is telling us that elective means chosen, and I'm going to tell you it does. I'm going to tell you it does, Lizanne, but
not all the time, though.
Right. From experience, they may have elected welding and it's full. And so it may be the elective third on their list. But at the end of the day, if we're educators, it doesn't matter who walks in our room. We're supposed to do our best to try and meet them there and fulfill that. And I see Cheryl's eyebrows going up and shaking her head, and it is challenging and it is exhausting. And I do know that you do that, Cheryl. So, mad props to you. Let's get Mitch's take on accountability and classroom size before we open the floor for just general comments and conversation.
I agree with Cheryl on the having different 504s and IEPs, and then you have to start looking at all the data and who can read and who can't read. And when you start looking at it, it opens your eyes, and it's like you have a lot to deal with. So the more students you have, more variety you have. But for me, the bigger the class, the harder it is to do whole group work. When you don't have enough space for everybody to do the same lesson at the same time. You don't have enough cutting boards, you don't have enough knives, you don't have enough table space. So you're having to divide up your attention between those that, okay, we're going to do the hands-on, the lab, we're going to do the cooking, we're going to do the prepping. And then the rest of you are going to kind of have to just hang out over here. And then next class time, we're going to kind of switch. So it makes it difficult. And I really think that no matter how good of a job we do with some of the lab stuff, I really think we have students that slip through the cracks because it's like, well, I'm not really wanting to do it, so I'm going to try and hang back from it. So it makes it, the class size makes it difficult. Not impossible, just difficult. And it extends the amount of time it takes to learn one lesson.
Absolutely. And that does become a major challenge. But I want to touch on something that you said, Mitch, and I know you're talking about one specific lesson when you talk about the difficulty in teaching knife skills and not having full equipment and to do it everybody at once. I want to talk about a different approach, if you will. When we talk about the teacher being the facilitator, a lot of us think old school, and I'm gonna bring up some pictures real quick. When we talk about old school, we need to talk about my glasses. We generally think of the educator in the center of the picture, and I think this is the right picture. So we generally think of the educator standing in the middle, showing everybody what to do. And in what you're talking about, if you were running a knife skills demo or lab, if you're standing there and you have all your old school, like I remember Johnson and Wales, all the tables lined up, everybody has their own cutting board, and this exact model for a knife skills class, really not effective. The teacher's in the center of the model. as we look forward to a different approach or a different way of doing things, I have a different model that we could take a look at, where if we take a look at this one, we see the student in the center of the model, and we've moved the teacher to the outside circle. Now, this doesn't solve the problem of the cutting boards that you're speaking about, Mitch. But in some of those classes where we may have some more advanced students, if we were to take this model, and in this picture, you just see the teacher removed and the student in the instructor's spot. But if we were to maybe have 5 or 6 small groups like this in the classroom, could that alleviate some of those challenges by identifying those leaders, figuring out who our levels are? We're fortunate enough to have an instructional planning tool, which gives us all that information. We don't have that at the post-secondary level. We're not privy to that. So I don't get all that data breakdown like I used to. But if we're able to identify those different levels, could we also identify the higher levels and create some smaller groups to maybe make the delivery of information a little easier, to where we're facilitating through the student, thereby creating student learning, student engagement, and student conversation?
Absolutely. But same thing when you run into, I can have, students, and I do, most of the direction of the class is directed by the students, but specifically talking about class size, even doing that model, you have to have the space for everybody, so, you're sitting there, you have some in the lab, some in the classroom, and when you're all by yourself, it's hard to have that supervision.
And I'm not sure if the data showed as far as like student accountability and empowerment, but the success rate, was that one of the factors? Are students empowered and held as accountable, finding that accountability in a classroom that is 35 students, to find those like aces in their places, quote unquote?
I agree with Mitch. I agree with Mitch with class size, and I do a lot of things that he does, and I also do what you were talking about, Eric. I put them into groups, but then I'll tell them this day, this half of the class, these groups are going to be doing the lab, while the other half of the class is doing something else. But I definitely pair them up in their groups where I have different levels of learning. So some students are teaching others, and, everyone's feeling a part of the group. And,
so when we talk about the space, we're talking about, back to what Don was saying, square footage becomes the problem.
Yes.
And Cheryl, is that the same with you? Cheryl, lock up. Cheryl may have froze. Mitch, you're definitely talking about, Cheryl's back. Cheryl, were you talking about square footage as the major challenge as well?
Yes, because if I had a larger room, then but I'm literally in a room because they kind of created this room for me. So my room is a third of the size of the other 2 culinary teachers' rooms. Oh. Yet I have as many, if not more, students in my room.
Are you telling me you have 35 students in that space? I heard you say 33 earlier.
35, 37. No, as much as 37.
That's insane. That's insane, but it's also a testament that everybody wants to be in your class.
Listen, we make it work. Like Mitch was saying, he has some work on something else. That's what I'm doing this week. I have my groups. We all figured our teams, and we're going to be doing our labs that way. We also become creative in that right now the cafeteria is short like 7 or 8 workers that they have. The student nutrition workers that they're short. And I send every, so many times a week, a group of my students go and assist in the cafeteria. And that frees up space in my room. while everyone is still learning
and
and doing things.
but you're also creating a wonderful learning opportunity for those people to get to go work in that environment and see firsthand, the creation of the product and going to the customer, which a lot of times we don't get to show them that.
Or
something
it's
else.
really commercial cooking. I mean, it's almost like it's industrial. It's cooking at a different level where they're the way that they do it in the cafeteria is totally different than you would do it in a restaurant, so to speak, right? So you're mass cooking because we have 2,700 kids in the school, so they're preparing mass amounts of meals. So that's good in itself because I can't show them how to do for 2,700 unless we have a large banquet that we're working. So a large catering.
And we have Kay Youngs checking in saying the square footage is her problem too, with 27 kindergartners in one room. And Liz Ann saying that organization is crucial. And I love to hear the creativity that you're using in doing that, because somebody else might be checking in tonight and having the same problem and be able to piggyback off what you're doing. We used to send students to the cafeteria as well, in rotation, just to create that learning opportunity. Remember, it's okay if it's blind to them as to the why. Someone once told me the best parenting technique is lie to your kids. So as long as the learning's taking place and we're facilitating that, it doesn't matter where it's happening. And if we can have that relationship to do that, that's amazing.
Okay, I'd like to bring up one more thing about the class size.
Absolutely.
Cheryl had said, aces in their places. I find it takes more time and it's a little bit harder to find all of them because you get a couple right off the bat. They're shining. They're blowing everybody else out of the water. And then you have some that maybe could, but they don't want to compete against. They're not the, let me try and draw attention. And I think you lose out on the opportunity to bring some of these students up to the level that they could be at because there are so many kids and you already have some that are coming up.
Right.
Every now and then I'll have one, they'll do something that'll surprise me and, I have to feed off of it. And if they don't have those little moments, then, which it's a lot harder when you're sitting there with 36 kids in your class.
You're exactly right. And I think the biggest problem is the stage of life. In high school, we're dealing with coming of age and so many different factors. And I used to tell every single one of my students, and Dabs, I don't know if you remember this or not, they tell you that high school is preparation for the real world. And I would call bullshit. There's no place in the real world where we're going to put 2,500 kids, all the same age,
Right.
all go through the same stage of life and growth. And there's no place in the world that we do that other than high school, middle school, elementary school. So it's not really preparation for the real world, but it is growth and development. We have to be able to work through it and learn from each other. So, those leaders, some of them pop out and then some of them shine at the beginning and then retract. I just think that's, from my experience, that's time of life. And as you dig into those students and learn more about them, I think the reasons as to the why come out. And just as we're talking about the accountability for our students and making them self-accountable as learners, I think as educators, we need to be self-accountable as well and learn the students' why. And then we'll be able to understand the what and the how of them. If we just reverse it, it's going to make us better educators when it comes to them. What
motivates them
all the time?
Yeah,
What
what
motivates
motivates them?
them?
Lizanne and I fight about this all the time. Real world is the world you're experiencing at. We argue
Totally.
this all the time, and nothing but love. But you're right. But I also think you're wrong. Because if we're preparing them for real world, meaning where they're going to be, where they're going to end up, we're preparing them for it. If we're preparing them for real world, that means we're preparing them for this moment right now. And that's not what we tell them. We tell them we're preparing them for the real world. But what is their real world? It's different for every single person when they get out there. Where are they going to be? But it goes back to my point. If we find the why of the student, we can help them with their own individual what and how.
How long would it take to find the why of 35 students, though, versus 25 students? Or according to the data, is it essentially the same?
Well, I don't think that that's tracked because they're talking, they talk about teaching individuals, but
it's surface level.
And we're painting broad strokes here tonight. Let's be real. I mean, we could dig deep on all of this and go real far. But again, tonight is not about finding answers. It's about poking the bear, getting people to think. With such large class sizes, I would think clarity of expectation is crucial. And you're exactly right. The larger the class size, the more clarity we have to deliver, because we're going to have more difficulty in having those one-on-ones, those smaller group, that micro teaching. And Lizanne made a great point today in our preparation for this, and much love. She is absolutely incredible and spins really fast. When we start getting those larger class sizes, maybe we just have to look at the most effective techniques and start picking and choosing our delivery methods a little differently so that we become more effective.
Oh yeah, I'm already, next year's going to be even worse. I've already seen my numbers. I'm already working on what can I do differently to reach more of them and keep them going, which, I mean, I don't know how many people know that Robinson's under construction. So we're in a portable for the classroom, and we have a little galley, not too much bigger than a food truck, for our kitchen. So that's that's been the issue.
How many teachers are in your program?
What, my program?
Mitch, and how many students do you have? Yes.
I have one culinary.
Robin.
That's it.
Just you. Okay. And
Just
how many
me.
students do you have?
No,
how many students?
This year, I have an access class, and but my others are 30 to 36 each class. Next year, I'll have all of my classes 36 or more, and I have to take T-payroll. So I'll be teaching an extra class.
Mitch, let's be real. You don't have to, but that money's really nice.
It's not about the money. I can't grow the program enough to, if they're not, and it says a lot. They want to be, they want to take the culinary. So
and you're in that tweener stage of having that second teacher.
Yep.
I get it. Been there many times.
At my school, and 5.
Oh, you froze up, Cheryl. If I'm not mistaken, Cheryl's probably talking. They have 3 full-time culinary instructors and
150 kids in the program.
You cut out for a minute, Cheryl. You have 3 instructors and how many kids in the program?
Sorry, 550.
Oh,
God. I thought you said 150 at first. I'm like, that's pretty good.
No, 550, and they gave us a. How many have signed up that want culinary for next year? 1,030.
Whoa.
So
there's something to be said about quality over quantity. Just remember that. That advice was given to me one time by one of the best culinary instructors in the state of Florida, who's now retired, Miss Billy D'Annunzio. Nothing but love, Billy. I was shadowing her and learning from her, and she told me, Chef, just remember, quality over quantity. And I was like, yeah, screw that. And I kicked myself in the ass every step of the way. Quality over quantity. Just keep that in mind.
Well, obviously, we could not take 1,000 students. It's just the desire's there. there's a lot of students that want culinary, just like Mitch said. He's seeing numbers they want to take culinary, but he's one teacher unless they start adding teachers to him.
I'm just doing quick math in my head. If there's 1,000 teachers that want 1,000 students that want culinary, 3 teachers, 6 periods a day, that's class size of 55. That's real easy manageable. You got this.
No. Hell no.
That's an all new level of accountability, right?
They're going to run the cafeteria. They're just going to move out student nutrition.
Yeah.
Hey, don't give them any ideas. You know, I have nothing but a love for both of you for you know, doing what you do. More importantly, being my friends. I'm happy to call you both friends. Thanks for coming in tonight and sharing. And again, we're not solving any world's problems here. We're just hopefully getting people to think a little differently about the way they approach teaching. Maybe take a new look, take a step back, and look at themselves a little different. We're going to come back and do this again. And I hope everybody joins us. Until then, you know, I'd like to just leave with this if I could. It's my belief that education expands beyond the classroom and the school and into the lives of every student. By focusing on the students as individuals and instilling the confidence to believe in their own abilities, they are given life skills that will allow them to continue to grow. And I hope everybody can take a look at that and live that same way. To all the educators out there, I talk a lot of smack, but it takes a lot to do what we do. And nothing but love to everybody out there. Thank you very much, guys, for being part of the podcast tonight. Hope we can see you again real soon. Till next time, guys.